So now we know some details about the winter update for GMS. During the live stream or presentation, or whatever you want to call it, they didn't exactly go over anything that KMS already covered, which is a good thing. That's what a lot of people were worried about, that they were just going to show up and rehash everything we already knew from Orange Mushroom or the KMS presentation like literally 6 months ago. Luckily for us, they focused almost entirely on all the GMS specific quality of life and beyond quality of life changes that they teased in the last Inkwell's note. We're talking about more widely and easily available pitched boss accessories, the ability to restore destroyed equipment, familiar improvements, and even just some general quality of life. There are so many good things to talk about here, but I really want to focus on just a few. Without exact details and patch notes to tell us about some of these systems, we're still left to speculate on how potent they will be or exact details. In the case of pitched boss accessories, apparently we're going to be able to get pitched boss accessories from some kind of expedition-like system tied with the new familiar updates, as well as even getting fragments of pitched boss accessories from killing the bosses that drop them, presumably as a pity system. So we're going to be able to get a pity system, sometimes luck out from expedition systems, and be able to restore them by fighting the boss and finding drops from hunting monsters apparently. It's so many things at once, and it's really hard not to imagine that in a year's time, like, everybody's just going to be running around with pitched, and that's not a bad thing. If you're someone who already has some pitched, there's a good chance this is still going to benefit you massively. If you're someone that no pitched, well, you've got a bright future ahead of you. If I had to guess on how many kills it's going to take to get a pitched boss accessory, I would be surprised if you could get it in any less than 12 weeks of kills. That is quite a lot, but compared to the pitch drop rate that most people experience, that is quite generous. I'm actually going to have a video dropping pretty damn quickly after this one about my own experience with pitch drop rate. It is a little bit late. I intended to drop it before MapleCon, but hey, I'm just the worst. And as for the trace restore systems, I have no speculation on those because those are entirely new systems with nothing to base it on in the current game, and it's really hard to say, like, how rare would they be from regular monsters? Did they actually mean regular monsters? And from the bosses, who knows how many kills it would take to restore a destroyed equipment? I guess in that case, I would assume probably about as long as it would take to get the pity fragments built up. It's also not even necessarily a guarantee that every single boss that can drop a pitched is going to drop pity fragments. In fact, I would kind of expect that maybe some will be left out. Specifically, bosses that have pitched that can't be Starforced, therefore you only ever need one copy of. Bosses like Will or Chosen Saren. Once you get one, that's kind of all you're going to need forever unless you're trying to get 2 copies to play Flame Leapfrog with. However, in the case of the familiar expedition system, also officially known as the Mystic Frontier system, that did in fact show a Mitra's emblem box, as well I think as a Will book box. So that system will be able to get you those equipments, but I'm still unsure or whether or not they're going to do that for the fragments. I really hope they do, but you know, I would understand if they didn't. And real quick, in the case of the Starforce system, we didn't get any specific information about the KMS changes that we should have had by now in a normal world, but in this GMS going its own way kind of world, we're just getting this kind of interim system where things will not be as low level when they blow up anymore. For example, when you blow up a 22-star item, you're going to start out at 17 stars. It honestly is a small little thing, but anything helps. And since I already touched on it a little bit, let's go right into familiars. Familiar system is going to get some vague improvements. We already knew some things, like they said they were going to reduce and remove some of the useless lines for familiars. So, for example, I would hope that we no longer have a 10% chance to fall in love when we're hitting things. Or, turning our character completely red or black. Those things are funny and they have their charm in their own way. But we don't want to see those lines when we're going for boss damage or something. They also said they were going to improve the clarity of some of the lines. So in that case, I hope that it no longer just says restores a large amount of HP, where there are actually several different lines that say large HP that all mean different percentages. That kind of system, the way it is now, is already infuriating as hell for existing players, and I can only imagine how frustrating and annoying it is for newer players. In fact, newer players probably just look at that system and turn away and run, especially when 99% of it appears to just be completely useless. Familiar presets are also going to be able to be tied to our character presets, which, thank God, I no longer have to constantly leave my drop familiar in my bossing loadout because I'm just too lazy to change it. It's a me problem, but I also imagine that's the way that a lot of players play. All familiars will also stack to 9,999, which is pretty crazy because they also just implemented a familiar bag, which is honestly completely obsolete by the 9,999 change. Maybe not on Reg server, but on Reboot, you're going to be hard-pressed to find anybody who really feels the need to buy that bag, except for people who just want every bag. They're also increasing the bag limit from 5 to 10. And as some sick, cruel, twisted joke, when they're showing off the new familiar UI, they also put in a legendary familiar in there. Now, is that a tease to show that Reboot is going to get natural legendary familiars? God, I hope so. I'm not really too hopeful about that one. I think that one's being a little bit too positive. However, they would be foolish to not leave some surprises for the actual patch notes, so I'm hoping that's one of them. And in one of the most vindicating moments in my Maplestory speculating life, Arcane boxes and Absolab boxes are going to be tradable in the Reboot server. To me, that is exactly what the wording in the Inkwell's note said, but I would understand people doubting that that was what was actually meant to be said, because it just kind of seems crazy. But honestly, I don't think it's that ridiculous. It will make things a little bit cheaper, but getting the gear itself is not always the hardest part. It's getting the money to actually get high-starred Arcane gear, so it is extremely nice. But honestly, the best part about this is now you can pretty much completely forgo the god-awful weekly system to do with Absolab gear. I was already resigned to never doing those weekly quests ever again in my life, but with this change, that is 100% going to be the case. I will never step foot in those places again, except to get black hearts, while they still exist. Ren was actually confirmed to be able to be hyperburned, and that Ren is the name and not Len, which quite frankly is one of the best parts about this whole live stream. I haven't really talked about it much, but I'm actually incredibly excited for Ren. I love warrior classes and I love hurricane classes, so to have a warrior hurricane class, well, that's pretty damn awesome. Unfortunately, the animations and stuff, they do look really good, but it's not exactly my cup of tea. Unfortunately, I guess, we just turn everything down to like 10% transparency anyway, and at that point, it doesn't really matter. But for me, I was extremely on the fence about who I was going to hyperburn for this winter update, and with this, well, the choice is made for me. The only question now is whether or not I want to do it on the Challenges world, because there is a lot of things to consider when you're doing that. The Challenges world is confirmed again, as we probably knew from KMS. And this one, they said they are going to run for longer this time. I believe they said 5 months to match what KMS does. At least I think that's how long theirs is. Last time I actually ended up really not enjoying Challenger World, but I kind of set myself up for failure with that one because my choice was Wild Hunter, which as a completely unsupported, unlinked class does pretty poorly. So seeing everyone else pick really good classes and having a lot of success, yeah, it just made me kind of check out and just not care that, and I picked a Wild Hunter, a class that I've already played before, and I knew I didn't really like too much for bossing, so I really kind of screwed myself on that one. But this time, I could do it with Ren. The problem there is then I'm separate from my money and all the things I can give it on Reboot. But also, one of the biggest perks of Challengers World, and I said this last time in my Challengers World video, is the fact that you get to do months worth of an extra Soul Erda daily, which is also now becoming a weekly quest. Now there is a worry with that in its transition to becoming a weekly quest, it becomes worldwide instead of server-wide. Do I think they'll do that? No, but I don't think it's a 0% chance. I also am a little bit worried, or actually a lot of bit worried, that when it transitions to a weekly quest, it's actually going to become less rewarding like Monster Park Extreme did in exchange for being so much less effort. Would that be the worst thing in the world? No, because it's making Maplestory a lot less grindy and a lot more daily intensive. But for many daily story players, such as myself most of the time, that is pretty much my entire source of fragments. That and the 3,000 monsters I had to kill to actually grind out the daily, dropping fragments. So I just hope that the overall total isn't hurt too much. We are probably going to lose out even if they just do it 12 times 7, because we're just not going to get as many from killing 15,000 monsters a week. Now that's pretty much all the major things I wanted to talk about, but there are some little things that I would like to just quickly mention. We're getting a notification, well, not a notification, but a visual indicator that we are invincible on our HP bar. That's something I was literally just talking about like within the last few months. And the meso cost for changing hyperstat presets will also just be completely removed, which I was complaining about yesterday, and I've also complained about many times. And there has also been several other little changes sprinkled throughout this, but like I said, this is not a recap video. It's just about what I wanted to talk about, but I'm not not done yet because I want to talk about something that is actually concerning me. I don't want to be a downer on this otherwise amazing patch, but anytime we get a lot of really good GMS specific news like this, I'm expecting some kind of dagger to the heart for Reboot players. Now, what is worrying me specifically and what is worrying a lot of players is the lack of confirmation to do with the universal cash shop. And if you don't know what I mean by that, in KMS 6 months ago, they made the cash shop completely universal for all classes. That means no more restrictions on whether you're an Explorer, Resistance, or Cygnus Knight, or whatever it may be. Honestly, one of the biggest changes they could have ever announced. This benefits literally every type of player in the game. When they add a bunch of bosses to the game or when they revamp a bunch of bosses, not everyone really bosses that seriously. But this affects the henhos who just want to sit around in Genesis and talk about their fashion. This affects the grinders who want to have vac pets on all their characters. And this affects the bossers who maybe have a legion of boss mules like myself. Now classes that I used to ignore because, well, like, I like Kaiser, but I just don't really like any of the other Nova characters. So if I want pets on my Kaiser, especially a vac pet, I'm pretty much buying it for that one character alone, where I could instead buy something that is going to benefit the Explorers, of which I play like 10 of them. Like, I really don't need to explain it. We all know how big of a deal this is, but one thing we do know is GMS has always handled their cash shop a little bit differently. And unfortunately, we have a history of just arbitrarily not getting some changes that KMS got because reasons. And when those changes are cash op related, we very often not get them, or we don't get information on them. We were left for a while wondering if we were even going to get the Explorer packages or the Cygnus Knight packages. And one thing that was worrying me about this live stream is that they were going to announce a bunch of crazy things that got everybody hyped up, and then they're just going to like sweep this one change under the rug and like hope nobody notices. But my hope is that KMS saw a massive increase in their cash op sales due to this change, because I know I would buy more stuff if it wasn't restricted to just like one character, even though I've already bought a lot. And you know, if they did see an increase, GMS would just follow suit. I mean, like, look, there's no reason to think that we won't get it. Like, they haven't said anything, but that's also part of the problem. They haven't said anything. We have no confirmation. And this is something that they know the players are going to want. The theme of this KMS patch that it came from was basically giving the players a bunch of things that they've always dreamed about, almost as like an appreciation to them and also like an apology for some of the shortcomings in other updates. But let me move on, because that's also not the only thing I'm worried about. Let's talk about the boss prep rooms. If you didn't know, there is going to be this prep room tied to every boss that resets all of your cooldowns and preps everything for the boss fight. This includes origin skills, making continuous ring immediately active to use, as well as, you know, resetting the cooldown for Ring of Restraint. Literally anything that has a cooldown. It's going to make bossing incredibly fast, and it also just means so much more for us over here in Reboot. As many of you know, in KMS, boss crystals sell for literal pennies compared to what they sell for over here in Chronos and Hyperion. And if the base ratio comparison already wasn't bad enough, they continuously keep nerfing boss crystals over in KMS repeatedly. Luckily for us in GMS, they have resisted giving us these changes. They understand that we have a much different economy and we just play a different game, so they don't nerf our boss crystals because presumably they understand how integral it is to our progress. Without it, we would pretty much all crumble and fail. Grinding for money is not a fun game plan. However, in a world where we don't get any boss crystal nerfs and we do get the boss prep room in its full power, our boss muling is about to go insane. We're not all of a sudden going to start making more money than we did before, but we are going to spend drastically less time in literally every boss, because not only are we just going to be able to go in Origin every time, but don't forget we're also getting Ascent skills, the next thing after Origin. They're not stronger than Origin, at least I don't think they are, but they are incredibly powerful. But after 3 Ascent skills and an Origin skill, pretty much any boss that isn't relevant to your progression is just going to drop after like 10-20 seconds. It's going to be insane. It's going to be a big boon to me because I have a legion of boss mules, quite literally. But boss muling, which was once this really time-gated thing that a lot of people didn't find appealing, is all of a sudden going to be so much more accessible. I think we are going to see a gigantic spike in just the average net worth of each player if this change goes through, at least without any boss crystal nerfs. In my opinion, it's a very unpredictable situation because this is something that benefits players like me the most, but it also benefits literally everybody. This system goes well beyond just how quickly it can make you money. It's also just really significant to making Maplestory feel a lot better to play. That was the reason they added it in the first place. Sometimes it really sucks when you want to origin a boss that's about to die, but you know you're going to enter the next boss you fight with literally nothing. You're completely out of gas. And if you're a DPM class or a DPS class, or a burst class with really poor DPM, it's going to feel extra worse to just go into another boss fight immediately. It also made continuous ring feel a lot less appealing compared to other options like Ring of Restraint, because you had to either like alter your drop gear or overcube your drop gear to compensate for having one ring slot that's just going to be eaten up by nothing. But if all that's a little bit too much doom and gloom for you, if it makes you feel any better, those are really the only things I'm worried that they're going to try to not give us for GMS, or at least try to make up some reason why we can't have it yet. Also, I fully expect Sia to break the cash shop thing in some way if we do get the universal cash shop. Quite honestly, I'll be more surprised if it goes off without a hitch and Sia does not cause some issue, whether it be Sia breaking the whole thing altogether or Sia just being left out of the mix.